In this mini lecture, we're going to look at linear functions and slope. We first start off and begin with the slope formula. So in using this formula, we're usually given 2 points. 2 points, two ordered pairs. Ordered pairs are arranged as x1, y1 and x2, y2. When you're given the two ordered pairs, they're going to be actual values. For instance, we may say 2, 5 and 3, 6. Well, we'll label these x1, y1 because they're always in the order of x and y. This is the first point I see, so we'll label those x sub 1s and y sub 1. And this will be the second point, so why not label that x sub 2 and y sub 2. And this could be a method going on for all of your slope problems when given 2 points. Label that first order pair x1, y1, and that second order pair x sub 2, y sub 2. After that, you use what's called the slope formula. The slope formula is m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So paying attention to detail is very important in math, so make sure that these numbers, the 2's and 1's, are subscripts. They are subscripts, right? Do not write them as exponents, and make sure you keep them as subscripts. So let's start off with an example. Let's say we have a problem such as 3 comma negative 1 and 1 comma 7. We're given these 2 points. We're told to find the slope. Find the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points, right? There's a line on a graph that passes through these points, and we'd like to find the slope of that line. Well, here we're given 2 points or two ordered pairs, so we can use our slope formula. The first thing I may do usually is label these. I had spoke about the ordered pairs always being x and y order, and the one on the left, 3 comma negative 1, is the first one I see, so I'll label those my sub 1's. The 1 comma 7 is the second point I see, just reading from left to right, so I'll label those x sub 2 and y sub 2. Next, I can go ahead and substitute in, but first I always like to write down my formula, right? Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Once I do that, I can substitute in. Make sure, again paying attention to detail, you write the minus sign from the formula. Writing the minus sign from the formula is important, and then we go ahead and substitute in because the other values that we do sub in could have signs that may need to be changed. So y2 is 7 minus y sub 1 is negative 1. X sub 2 is 1 minus x sub 1 is 3. And you see how we had this y sub 1 was a negative value. Sometimes students like to throw away one of these signs initially, but make sure you don't do that. You write the sign that's in the formula and write down the sign of the value for the for whatever you're substituting in. So now we have 7, a minus and a minus. We'll make this plus 1. So see how that was important to have in there. 1 minus 3, I'll write that over. And now the slope will be 8 over 1 minus 3 is negative 2. And then we always will like to simplify, or in this case divide, right? So 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. So our slope is negative 4. If we want to just keep it as a fraction, some instructors may want you to do this, so you'll just keep it as negative 4 over 1. Negative 4 over 1. And this will be as the fraction form of it. And you also may need it in fraction form later if you're going to go ahead and graph a line with some other pieces added in. The next thing we turn to are the different forms of the equation of a line. Different forms of the equation of a line. So the first form is known as slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. So this is the y equals mx plus b form. So when it's in this form, the only values that are replaced or substituted in, I should say, are for the m and the b. Why is that? Because the m in mathematics for us stands for slope. And it'll be something like what we just found, either a number, decimal, fraction, and that will represent the slope. It's always the number, or that value, I should say, in front of the x. The b represents for us what's known as the y-intercept. In your study of intercepts, you know intercepts are where it crosses the axis at a certain point. So the y-intercept is where that graph of that line crosses the y-axis at a specific point. So that b value will be the y-intercept, and more specifically it'll be 0 comma b, right, every time, because if it's crossing at a point on the y-axis, then it should have no x value, right? It should be going straight up to the y value and then going through it, that point right there, and then the line somehow going through it at some slope. So it'll be 0 comma b. So this is known as slope-intercept form. The next form of the equation of a line is what's known as point-slope form. Point-slope form. So this is y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. Alright, y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. So again here, m is the slope, and for this one we usually would substitute in for y sub 1 and x sub 1. Usually you're going to be given an x and y ordered pair, some point, and then you'll substitute in for x sub 1 and y sub 1. You will not substitute in for the x or the y without the subscripts, just the x sub 1, y sub 1, and the m. And then once you do, it'll be considered in point slope form. The last one is known as standard form. Sometimes they'll call it standard form, or they may say general form. So that is written as ax plus by equals c. Here the x and y terms are to the left, and the constant term is by itself on the right hand side. Ax plus by equals c. Alright, let's start with an example to see how we can start applying different things into this concept of linear functions and slope. Let's say we're told to write the slope-intercept form of an equation. So write the slope-intercept form. And you're told to write the slope-intercept form of a line, and the line is passing through a certain point with an x-intercept. So for our example, we want the slope-intercept form of the line passing through the point -1, 5 with an x-intercept of -4, with an x-intercept of -4. So we know a few things. We know that we have a point -1, 5, right? We're given this point and our line crosses through this point. Points are ordered pairs that have x and y values. Next we have an x-intercept of -4. The actual ordered pair for an x-intercept would be negative 4 comma 0, right? If I already knew before that a y-intercept was 0 comma whatever value that is, then x-intercept should be alternatively that value comma 0, right? If this line crosses through the x-intercept at negative 4, then it should cross at that point where negative 4 is on the x-axis, thus not having any y value. So we'll have a 0 as the y value actually, right? So it looks like to me we have 2 points. We're told to write the slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form. And now you're thinking the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. But in slope-intercept form, they give you a slope that you need to plug in for. But we don't have a slope. So whenever the problem doesn't give you a slope, we have to find our own slope. So although this is the x-intercept is still also a point. So we can label that x and y. Well, now we have 2 points that we know our line is going through. So we can label these the sub 1s and these the sub 2s and go ahead and use the slope formula to find the slope. Alright, so now I'm just going to plug in, and remember, put the minus signs in. So y sub 2 is 0, minus y sub 1 is 5, x sub 2 is negative 4, minus x sub 1 is negative 1. So we'll have 0 minus 5 over negative 4 minus a minus 1 is negative 4 plus 1. So we'll have a negative 5 over negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. And then lastly, a negative divided into a negative makes this whole entire slope positive. So now we have our slope. Our slope is 5/3. And we also have x-intercept and also have a y-intercept. Well, in y equals mx plus b form, we also had a y-intercept, right? That b value is the y-intercept. We could do this 2 ways. We could use slope-intercept form right away, or we could use point-slope form as well. If we use slope-intercept form, we would plug in for m, plug in for x and y, and solve for b. Have our b value then, and then rewrite the slope-intercept form with just the slope we found and the b. We also have a point and a slope of 5/3. We could very well use point slope form and substitute in for x1, y1, substitute in the slope, and then we could go ahead and algebraically manipulate the equation and turn it into slope-intercept form. I'm going to go with the first way. So the first way, we have y equals mx plus b. Well, we just found the slope to be 5/3, so you can plug a 5/3 in. Y, for us, y can be found from that first point they gave us. Y is 5. So 5 is equal to 5/3 times x. X is part of that from that first point that they gave us. The x value is negative 1. And then we say plus b, because we don't know the y-intercept. They gave us the x-intercept, but they never gave us the y-intercept, so we need to solve for the y-intercept. So we get 5 equals 5/3 times negative 1 will make it a negative 5/3 plus b. And now we need to solve for b, right? So we would add 5/3 to both sides, add 5/3 to both sides, and then b will equal 5 over 1, right? 5 is like 5 over 1 plus 5/3. You'll just need to do a little bit of scrap work on the side, and just in remembering fractions. And if you don't, feel free to go back to other videos that are posted in this YouTube page for fractions. We need to first find the LCD. LCD is 3. Well, you multiply the denominator times 3 to get that 3, so we multiply the numerator times 3, which is 15. We multiply this denominator times 1 to get 3, so the numerator gets multiplied times 1. So now we have like denominators. So therefore we can just add the numerators whenever we have like denominators and put them as one fraction. So 15 plus 5 makes it 20 thirds. So b is equal to 20 thirds. Alright, so now we just found the y-intercept, and a few moments ago we found the slope. The problem said to put our answer in slope-intercept form. They want the slope-intercept form of the line passing through. So all we do is substitute in the slope we found and the y-intercept, and we're done. So the equation of our line is y equals, and then we go up and say, what was that slope again? That slope was 5 thirds, right? So y equals 5 thirds x plus our b. What was our b? Our b was 20 thirds, so plus 20 thirds. So y equals 5 thirds x plus 20 thirds. This is the slope-intercept form of the line passing through negative 1 comma 5 with an x-intercept of negative 4. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Maybe this example will say to give the slope and y-intercept. So give the slope and y-intercept of this equation. 6x minus 12 equals 0. 6x minus 12 equals 0. Alright, let's take a look. So what we need to do here is take a look at the 6x minus 12 equals 0. In this one, I don't see a y term, so that tips me off a little bit. It gives me a quick little tip on maybe what is occurring here. I only see an x term. So usually whenever we have only an x term, then the problem will eventually become x equals some number, which is the equation of a vertical line. Or if we only had a y term and didn't have an x term, then it will come out to be likely y equals to some number, which is the equation of a horizontal line. So I'm thinking this will eventually become the equation of a vertical line where x is equal to a number. So what I'm going to do is add 12 to both sides, and I get 6x is equal to 12, and it's doing exactly that, right? So now I divide both sides by 6, and x is equal to 2. So this right here, when x is equal to some value, this is an equation of a vertical line. X equals 2, x equals 20, x equals negative 8, x equals negative 50. Those are all equations of vertical lines whenever x is equal to a number, and it's shown in this format. So therefore, just to go a little bit deeper into it, the graph of this would look like as such. We would go to negative 2 on the x-axis, and then the graph would just simply be a vertical line going through 2 on the x-axis. So this is the graph of x equals 2. Well, the question was give the slope and y-intercept. So if you think about it, you're going from, let's say, this point right here on the x-axis and maybe up to this other point. When you're going up, think about the slope. The slope is rise over run. Rise is your up and down movement. Run is left and right. So rise doesn't just mean go up. Rise means up or down, depending on where you need to go. So let's say we needed to go up. We would have a rise. Maybe this is 2 or something like that. We would rise up 2 units. But where would we go left or right? Nowhere. So it would be maybe, for example, if I said we're going up 2 units, it would be 2 over 0, right? Because we didn't go anywhere left or right to get to this second point. We just went up 2. So we didn't have any run. So when you don't have a run, then you put a 0 in the denominator for run. Well, what is a 0 in a denominator of a fraction? That's undefined. Undefined. So our slope is undefined for all vertical lines, not just this vertical line, but for all vertical lines. The question asks for a slope, but we will say that the slope is undefined. And this is true again for all vertical lines. As you may guess, for horizontal lines, the slope is 0. Also, the question asks for a y-intercept. Well, as you can see for our example here that I graphed, we didn't have our graph cross the y-axis anywhere. So there is no y-intercept. No y-intercept. So for our example, the slope is undefined and there is no y-intercept. The next piece will be to find the x and y intercepts. Find the x and y intercepts. And what are we finding them of? We're finding them of the equation 4x minus y equals 4. 4x minus y equals 4. So if we were to graph this on some graphing calculator or some online website, we would very well see where the graph crosses the x and y intercepts, but let's do this by hand. So to find the x-intercept, we have to set y equal to 0. Alright, and then to find the y-intercept, you guessed it, we have to set x equal to 0. So you always set the opposite letter equal to 0 to find that intercept. So again, we're going to use the original equation, and now we're just going to plug in 0 for y to find the x-intercept. So we have 4x minus 0 equals 4. So 4x is equal to 4. And now we solve for x by dividing both sides by 4. Right? You always divide by what's next to the x. So x is equal to 1. So it looks like the x-intercept is 1, 0 to be specific as a point. And now we're going to go ahead and find the y-intercept. So again, we write the original equation. We set x equal to 0. So 4 times 0 minus y equals 4. 4 times 0 is 0. 0 minus y equals 4. Well, 0 minus y just leaves us the minus y equals 4. We know that we can't have a negative variable equal to a number as our answer. So here, the next thing you can do is either multiply both sides by -1 or divide both sides by -1. Either way, your choice, whatever you're comfortable with. And you're going to get y equals -4. So if that's the case, then our y-intercept is 0, -4. So these are our intercepts. This is the x-intercept and this is the y-intercept. Okay, our next example will ask, use the slope and y-intercept to graph the linear function 6x minus 3y equals -12. So it looks to me that when looking at this initial form of an equation of a line, to me this 6x minus 3y equals -12 looks to be in standard form, right? Where the x term and the y term on the left and the constant is on the right. That was the third form of the equation of a line that we looked at the beginning of this mini lecture. So we need to put this into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b form. We need to place it into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, so that we can know the slope and then we can know the y-intercept, and using those two pieces of information we can go ahead and place it on a graph. So we can algebraically manipulate this and put it in to slope-intercept form, right, by basically solving for y. Well, I need to get negative 3y by itself first, so I'm going to subtract the 6y. I'm doing the opposite of a positive 6y. So I say let's subtract 6x from both sides. So negative 3y equals negative 6x minus 12. Now I'm almost there. I almost have y by itself, but I have this negative 3 in front of it. So what do? I do the opposite of this operation, which is multiplication. The opposite would be division. So I divide everything by negative 3, or both sides by negative 3. So then we get y is equal to negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2x, and negative 12 divided by negative 3 is positive 4. So my equation is now in slope-intercept form, right? It's the same line. 6x minus 3y equals negative 12 is the same line as y equals 2x plus 4, just in a different form. It's just changed from standard form to slope-intercept form. So now I can see that my slope is 2, or you can write it as 2 over 1, right? That might help us better. And the y-intercept is 4, or maybe as an ordered pair we'll just say 0 comma 4. So these are the two pieces of information that I need to go ahead and graph. So the first thing I do is just go ahead and plot that y-intercept. So 0 comma 4. 0 comma 4 is right there. My slope is 2 over 1. It's a positive 2, so that means I go up 2, and this is a positive 1, so I go over to the right one. If this numerator was a negative 2, I would go down 2. If this denominator was a negative 1, I would go to the left one. Because remember, as far as slope, your rise over your run means up or down depending on the sign of your number. So positive, negative, right? And then the run is left or right depending on the sign of the number. So therefore mine are both positive, so I'm going up 2 and to the right one. And I'm not starting over, I'm starting exactly from that y-intercept point. So I count up 1, 2 units, and then over 1 unit and make my second dot. So I went up 2 units and over 1 according to my slope and made that second dot. After this, you just go ahead and connect the dots. Hopefully you have a straight edge along with your graph paper, and then you can go ahead and say this is the graph of the function 6x minus 3y equals negative 12. Alright, I hope this helped you. Feel free to share with anyone who may need this assistance. Go ahead and like and hit subscribe. Take care and have a great one.